The knock on Piper Coleman's apartment door came at the worst possible time, right as she was balancing on one foot, desperately tugging on her work pants while simultaneously brushing her teeth. Another late morning, another day of chaos, another knock, more insistent this time, coming. She called, spitting toothpaste into the kitchen sink as she hobbled toward the door, still wrestling with her zipper. Mrs. Abernathy from 3B stood in the hallway, looking frazzled. The elderly woman's hair was unusually disheveled, and she clutched a small rolling suitcase. "Piper, dear, I hate to impose, but I've got a family emergency in Florida. My sister fell and well, it doesn't matter. The point is, I need to leave immediately, and I was wondering if you could possibly watch Bruno for a few days. The neighbor in 4A said he'd pay for a dog sitter, but they've fallen through, and I'm desperate." Piper blinked. Bruno was Mrs. Abernathy's neighbor's dog, a golden retriever she occasionally spotted in the hallway. She'd petted him once or twice, but didn't know much about him or his mysterious owner, who she'd never actually seen despite living in the building for nearly a year. "I don't know, Mrs. Abernathy. My schedule at the library is pretty packed this week, and I'm already behind on my thesis research." "Please," Mrs. Abernathy pleaded. "I wouldn't ask if I weren't desperate. Bruno's owner is away on business, and I promised I'd take care of everything. He's a good dog, hardly any trouble at all. I've got his food, toys, everything you need right here." She gestured to a large canvas bag at her feet that Piper hadn't noticed before. Piper glanced at her watch. Late again. Her boss at the university library would not be pleased. How long would it be? Just 4 days, maybe 5 at most. His owner will be back by Saturday. Piper sighed. "All right, bring him over." Mrs. Abernathy's face lit up. "Oh, thank you, dear. Bruno is in my apartment. Here's my key. Just let yourself in. He's in his crate in the living room, and this is all his stuff." She thrust a canvas tote bag into Piper's arms. The neighbor left detailed instructions. "He's very particular about Bruno's care." Before Piper could respond, Mrs. Abernathy was hurrying toward the elevator. "I've got to catch my flight. Thank you again. You're an angel." And just like that, Piper became a dog sitter. After a frantic dash to the library, where she received the expected lecture from her supervisor, Piper finally returned to her apartment building that evening. She used Mrs. Abernathy's key to enter the tidy apartment and found Bruno waiting patiently in a large, plush crate. "Hello there, handsome," she said as she opened the crate door. Bruno bounded out, all golden fur and excitement, immediately pressing against her legs for attention. His tail wagged so hard his entire body shook. Okay, Piper laughed, kneeling to pet him. "Let's get you over to my place." She gathered Bruno's belongings, the surprisingly expensive-looking leash, the memory foam dog bed, the gourmet dog food, and led him to her apartment. While Bruno explored his temporary home, sniffing every corner with great interest, Piper finally had a chance to look through the instructions Mrs. Abernathy had mentioned. The note was typed on thick, cream-colored stationery with a simple QV monogram at the top. "Thank you for your help." Quinn. Piper raised her eyebrows at the meticulously detailed schedule. "Your dad's pretty organized, huh, Bruno?" Bruno tilted his head at her, those intelligent brown eyes studying her face. "Well, I guess we'll manage," she said, reaching for her phone to set alarms for all of Bruno's scheduled activities. The first day with Bruno went surprisingly well. He was well-trained and affectionate, following her around the apartment with devoted attention. The only challenge was waking up at 6:15 a.m. for his morning walk. Piper was decidedly not a morning person. As they strolled through the early morning quiet of the neighborhood park, Piper found herself enjoying the peaceful start to the day. Bruno walked perfectly on his leash, occasionally looking up at her with what she swore was a smile. "You're making me look good," she told him as a jogger passed by, commenting on how well-behaved he was. By the third day, they had settled into a comfortable routine. Piper brought Bruno to the university library with her, where he charmed everyone with his gentle demeanor. Her supervisor, initially annoyed at the idea, warmed up quickly when Bruno laid quietly at Piper's feet while she worked. "He's better behaved than most of our graduate assistants." her boss commented, sneaking Bruno a pat when she thought Piper wasn't looking. That evening, as Piper was preparing her simple dinner of pasta while Bruno watched hopefully from the kitchen floor, her phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Hello, hi, is this Piper Coleman?" a deep male voice asked. "Yes, that's me. This is Quinn Vega. I understand you're looking after my dog." Piper nearly dropped her wooden spoon into the pasta sauce. "Oh yes, Bruno's owner. He's doing great, no problems at all." "I'm glad to hear it. Mrs. Abernathy just called to let me know about her emergency trip. I appreciate you stepping in." His voice was warm but authoritative, the kind of voice accustomed to being listened to. "It's no trouble." "Bruno's a sweetheart," Piper replied, looking down at the dog who had perked up at hearing his name. "I'm actually returning to New York earlier than expected," Quinn continued. "I should be back tomorrow afternoon. Would you be able to keep him until about 6 p.m.? "Of course, that's fine." "Great. I'll stop by your apartment to pick him up. 3C, right?" "Yes, that's me." "Thanks again, Piper. Bruno can be particular about who he trusts, so the fact that he's comfortable with you says a lot." After they hung up, Piper looked down at Bruno. "So I get to meet your mysterious dad tomorrow, huh?" Bruno wagged his tail in response. The next day, Piper found herself unusually nervous as 6 p.m. approached. She'd cleaned her small apartment, put away the stacks of library books that usually covered every surface, and even changed out of her typical work clothes into a casual but cute sweater and jeans. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself as she checked her reflection in the mirror for the third time. "I'm just returning a dog to its owner." At precisely 6 p.m., there was a knock on her door. Bruno, who had been dozing on the couch, immediately jumped up, his tail wagging furiously as he rushed to the door. Piper took a deep breath and opened it. Standing in her hallway was possibly the most handsome man she'd ever seen in person. Tall with broad shoulders, dark hair that curled slightly at the temples, and striking blue eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners as he smiled. He wore a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms and well-fitted jeans that looked more expensive than her entire wardrobe. "Piper?" he asked, though his attention was immediately diverted as Bruno launched himself at his owner, practically crying with excitement. "Hey, buddy," Quinn laughed, dropping to one knee to properly greet his dog. Bruno licked his face enthusiastically, his whole body wiggling with joy. "I missed you too." When he finally stood up, his hand still resting on Bruno's head, Quinn extended his other hand to Piper. "Quinn Vega, it's nice to meet you in person." His handshake was firm but not overpowering. "Nice to meet you too," Piper replied, suddenly very conscious of her small, cluttered apartment. "Come in, I've got all Bruno's things packed up." Quinn followed her inside, glancing around with interest. "You're a librarian?" he asked, nodding toward her university ID badge on the counter. "Library sciences graduate student, actually. I work at the university library part-time while finishing my degree." "Impressive," he said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. "What's your thesis on?" "Digital archiving of historical documents for broader public access," she replied, surprised by his interest. "Not exactly thrilling cocktail party conversation." "I disagree." "The democratization of information is fascinating," Quinn said, kneeling again to accept more enthusiastic licks from Bruno. "How was he? Followed his schedule?" "He was perfect. We even adjusted the schedule a bit, hope that's okay." "I found he enjoys a longer morning walk if we go through the park rather than just around the block." Quinn looked up at her with genuine surprise. "He let you change the routine. He's usually so stubborn about his schedule." Piper shrugged. "We compromised. I agreed to wake up at an ungodly hour and he agreed to walk where I wanted to go." Quinn laughed, a rich, warm sound that made Piper smile. "Well, you've accomplished something impressive. Bruno doesn't adapt for just anyone." He stood, looking at her with new interest. "Would you be interested in continuing to walk him occasionally? I travel frequently for work, and while I usually take him with me or have arrangements, it would be good to have someone he likes as a backup." "I'd love to," Piper said immediately, already feeling a pang at the thought of not seeing Bruno again. Great. Can I get your number? I'll text you about rates and potential dates. As they exchanged information, Piper gathered Bruno's belongings. When Quinn insisted on paying her for the days she'd watched Bruno, she initially refused. Really, it was a favor for Mrs. Abernathy, no payment necessary. I insist, Quinn said, handing her an envelope. Bruno's care is important to me. Reluctantly, she accepted it, expecting perhaps $50 or $100. Later, after they'd left, she would discover it contained $500 in cash and a gift card to her university bookstore. As Quinn prepared to leave with Bruno, he paused at the door. Would you like to join us for a walk sometime this weekend? Bruno would love it, and it would give me a chance to hear more about your thesis. Piper found herself nodding before she could overthink it. I'd like that. Saturday morning, same ungodly hour. His smile was teasing. It's a date, she replied, then immediately felt her cheeks flush. I mean, not a date, just I know what you meant, Quinn said with a grin, but for what it's worth, I wouldn't mind if it was a date. With that, he and Bruno left, leaving Piper staring at her closed door with a mixture of confusion and excitement. Saturday morning arrived and Piper woke before her alarm, butterflies in her stomach. She dressed casually in leggings and a light sweater, suitable for a brisk morning walk. At 6:25, there was a knock on her door. Quinn stood there in running shorts and a fitted long-sleeve shirt, Bruno sitting obediently at his side. Ready to show me this park route that won Bruno over? He asked. They walked together in the crisp morning air, Bruno trotting happily between them. Quinn was surprisingly easy to talk to, asking thoughtful questions about her studies and sharing stories about his own dog-walking adventures. So what do you do? Piper finally asked as they reached the park. For work, I mean, you mentioned traveling a lot. Quinn hesitated briefly. I run a company called Viger Renewables. We develop and deploy renewable energy technologies, primarily solar and wind energy infrastructure. Oh, that's interesting, Piper said, genuinely intrigued. Is it a big company? Quinn smiled slightly. It's grown considerably over the past few years. As they continued walking, Quinn asked about her family, and Piper told him about growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, her parents who were both teachers, and her younger brother who was studying engineering. What about you? Where did you grow up? She asked. California initially, then all over. My father was in the military, so we moved frequently. I ended up at MIT for college and stayed on the East Coast ever since. MIT, impressive, Quinn shrugged modestly. I was good at math and science, it made sense. Their conversation flowed easily, and by the time they completed the loop around the park, Piper felt like she'd known Quinn much longer than just a few days. Would you like to get breakfast? Quinn asked as they approached their building. There's a great place around the corner that allows dogs on their patio. Over coffee and breakfast sandwiches, with Bruno settled contentedly under the table, Quinn and Piper continued their conversation. He was surprisingly down to earth for someone who clearly had a successful career, listening attentively as Piper talked about her passion for making historical documents more accessible. The problem is that so many incredible primary sources are locked away in university archives or private collections, she explained, warming to her favorite topic. My project focuses on creating standardized digital protocols that smaller institutions can implement without massive budgets. That's actually a problem we face in energy research too, Quinn said. Valuable findings that never make it into broader circulation because they're trapped in proprietary databases or paywall journals. Exactly, Piper said, delighted that he understood. Information should be a public good, not a luxury item. Quinn smiled at her enthusiasm. You know, my company has a charitable foundation that funds educational initiatives. We might be interested in supporting work like yours. Piper's excitement dimmed slightly. Oh, I'm not looking for funding or anything. I don't want you to think. I don't think anything except that your work sounds valuable, Quinn interrupted gently. But I understand, no pressure. As they walked back to their building, Bruno leading the way, Quinn asked if she'd like to have dinner with him the following weekend. A proper date this time, he clarified with a smile. No ambiguity. Piper found herself saying yes without hesitation. Their first official date was at a small, elegant restaurant downtown. Quinn arrived at her door with flowers not roses, but a thoughtful arrangement of wildflowers that matched her casual mention of growing up near meadows in Pennsylvania. Conversation over dinner revealed more about Quinn's business. While he downplayed it, Piper gradually realized that Viger Renewables wasn't just a company, it was a major player in sustainable energy with projects across multiple continents. "Wait, are you the Quinn Vega, the solar energy guy?" She finally asked as they shared dessert. The one who was on the cover of Business Week last year. Quinn looked slightly embarrassed. "That was an unfortunate photo, my PR team insisted." Piper's mind raced. She'd assumed Quinn was successful, but she hadn't realized she was dating a literal billionaire. Her apartment probably cost less than his watch. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Would it have changed anything if I had?" he countered. "In my experience leading with I'm a billionaire tends to complicate things before they even start." Piper considered this. "Fair point, but it's a pretty big thing to omit." "I wasn't hiding it," Quinn said. "I just wanted to get to know you as a person first and have you know me the same way, not as a balance sheet or a magazine profile." His sincerity was evident, and Piper found she couldn't argue with his logic. "I guess Bruno doesn't care about your bank account either." "Exactly. Though he does benefit from it, that memory foam bed cost more than my first couch." The revelation about Quinn's wealth didn't change their budding relationship as much as Piper might have expected. He never flaunted his money or made her feel uncomfortable about the disparity in their financial situations. If anything, he seemed to prefer the simplicity of their time together: walks with Bruno, quiet dinners, conversations about books and ideas rather than business deals. Over the following weeks, they fell into a comfortable routine. Quinn traveled occasionally for work, but even then he called regularly. When he was in town, they spent most evenings together, either at her apartment or his much larger penthouse in the same building. Quinn's home was beautiful but surprisingly understated, spacious, and filled with natural light, with comfortable furniture and walls lined with books. The only truly extravagant feature was a state-of-the-art kitchen where Quinn, it turned out, enjoyed cooking elaborate meals for them. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Piper asked one evening as he presented her with perfectly seared scallops over risotto. "My mother was Italian. She believed no one should leave home without knowing how to feed themselves properly," he explained, placing Bruno's considerably less gourmet dinner on the floor. "And during college, I worked in a restaurant kitchen to make extra money." "You worked through college, but I thought your family." Quinn shook his head. "We weren't wealthy. My father was a career military man and my mother taught elementary school. I had scholarships for tuition, but living expenses were on me. So how did you?" Piper gestured vaguely at the penthouse around them. "Build all this?" Quinn smiled. "A lot of hard work, some good luck, and a renewable energy technology patent I developed during grad school. The timing was right, the world was just starting to take clean energy seriously." As their relationship deepened, Piper discovered that Quinn's wealth was the least interesting thing about him. He was passionate about environmental conservation, could debate literature for hours, and despite his success, still mentored engineering students from disadvantaged backgrounds. He was also, she learned, deeply loyal. Bruno wasn't just a pet but a companion who had been with him through the early, uncertain days of his company. The dog's elaborate care schedule stemmed not from eccentric billionaire behavior, but from a genuine concern for the animal who had kept him company through many solitary nights of work. The only real tension in their relationship came from Piper's fierce independence. She refused to let Quinn pay for everything, insisted on contributing to their dates, and was determined to finish her degree and secure her career on her own merits. "I'm not asking to support you," Quinn said one night after a minor argument about him offering to help with her student loan payments. "I'm asking to support the things you care about. There's a difference." "I know," Piper sighed, curling against him on her worn couch, Bruno snoring softly at their feet, But I've always made my own way. It's important to me. I understand that, Quinn said, stroking her hair. It's one of the things I love about you. They both froze at his words. It was the first time either had used the L word. Quinn recovered first, tilting her chin up to meet his eyes. I do love you, Piper. Not just because you took care of Bruno or because you can talk about archive protocols with genuine enthusiasm. I love you because you see me not the company or the money, just me. Piper's heart raced. I love you too, even though you make your dog follow a schedule that's more regimented than my graduate program. Quinn laughed, pulling her closer. Bruno appreciates structure. Bruno appreciates treats and belly rubs like any normal dog, she countered. The schedule is all you. Maybe, Quinn conceded, but you have to admit he's thriving. Looking at the contented dog sprawled across her apartment floor, Piper couldn't argue. Bruno was indeed thriving just as she was, in this unexpected relationship that had started with a simple favor for a neighbor. 6 months into their relationship, Quinn invited Piper to join him for a business trip to California. While he attended meetings, she explored San Francisco, enjoying the freedom to visit libraries and archives relevant to her research. On their last evening, Quinn suggested a private dinner at their hotel suite. When she returned from her day of exploration, she found the room transformed with candles and flowers, and Bruno wearing a small bow tie collar. "What's all this?" she asked, laughing as Bruno pranced around proudly in his formal attire. Quinn, looking uncharacteristically nervous, took her hands. "6 months ago, Mrs. Abernathy did me the greatest favor of my life, though neither of us knew it at the time. By going to Florida, by asking you to watch Bruno," Quinn smiled. "I've had business travel companions, dog sitters, and relationships before. But I've never had someone who fits so perfectly into every aspect of my life. Someone who challenges me intellectually, supports me emotionally, and loves Bruno almost as much as I do." Piper's heart began to race as Quinn reached into his pocket and dropped to one knee. Bruno, as if on cue, sat obediently beside him. "Piper Coleman, will you marry me?" The ring he held was stunning but not ostentatious, a vintage-style emerald surrounded by small diamonds. "It was my grandmother's," Quinn explained. "Green to match your eyes." Tears welled in those green eyes as Piper nodded. Yes, I'll marry you." As Quinn slid the ring onto her finger, Bruno barked excitedly, breaking the emotional moment and making them both laugh. "I think he approves," Quinn said, standing to pull Piper into his arms. "He'd better." "I'm not negotiating another custody arrangement," she teased, before kissing her new fiancé. Their wedding, held the following spring, was an elegant but intimate affair in the botanical gardens where they often walked Bruno. True to her independent nature, Piper had finished her degree and secured a position as a digital archivist at a prestigious university library. Quinn had surprised her by establishing a foundation to support digital access initiatives for historical archives, with Piper as the director, a position that allowed her to pursue her passion while maintaining her professional independence. As they exchanged vows under a canopy of flowering trees, Bruno serving as the ring bearer with assistance from Piper's brother, Piper reflected on how a simple agreement to dog sit had changed the entire trajectory of her life. Later, during their reception, Mrs. Abernathy approached them, beaming with pride. "I always thought you two would be perfect together," she declared. "Why do you think I asked you to watch Bruno instead of calling a professional service?" Piper and Quinn exchanged surprised glances. "You planned this?" Piper asked. The elderly woman winked. "Let's just say I've been around long enough to recognize when two people might need a little push in the right direction, or in this case, a golden retriever to lead the way." Quinn laughed, slipping his arm around Piper's waist. "Remind me to double whatever donation we've planned for Mrs. Abernathy's favorite charity." "Already done," Piper whispered. "Great minds think alike." As they moved to the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife, Bruno watching contentedly from his special seat of honor, Piper leaned her head against Quinn's chest. "Do you think we would have met eventually anyway, even without Bruno?" Quinn considered this, his hand warm against the small of her back. I'd like to think so, but I'm grateful we didn't have to leave it to chance. Me too, Piper agreed, thinking of all the small decisions and coincidences that had led to this moment. A neighbor's emergency, a dog's schedule, a billionaire who valued loyalty and intelligence over wealth or status. Later that night, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Bruno settled happily with Mrs. Abernathy, who had volunteered to dog sit. It's only fair, dears, considering what my last dog-sitting arrangement led to. Ready for our next adventure, Mrs. Vega? Quinn asked, holding out his hand. Piper took it, the emerald ring catching the light. Lead the way, Mr. Vega. As their car pulled away, Piper reflected that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the simplest acts of kindness, like agreeing to watch a neighbor's dog, never suspecting that both the dog and its owner would capture her heart forever.